Hello and welcome to another stupendous, illuminating and challenging episode of Everything Electric News. Now, as the world reels due to the idiocy of certain governmental figures spreading lies and tomfoolery, what is encouraging to see in stark contrast is the continued rise in the adoption of four major global technologies: wind, solar, batteries and electric vehicles. It doesn't matter what certain politicians drone on about, the industries supplying this technology are now very well established, and the use case is now beyond question, both in terms of environmental use and in terms of financial use. It makes economic sense if you use data instead of bigotry. Wind, solar and batteries is the cheapest way we can produce all the electricity we need 24/7. There are some stories coming up that verify this. Electric cars, for example, have now reached and in some cases past the tipping point where they just become normal. Instead of calling them electric cars, we're going to have to start calling them cars. We know they last much longer than their combustion forebears, they require less energy to operate and have uses beyond just transportation. They're also mobile energy storage systems. So let's jump right in to the very first story. Our 3 free YouTube channels on EVs and clean tech are funded by our fun-packed test drive-tastic events in Farnborough, London, the Southwest, the North, Melbourne and Sydney, and next up, Everything Electric Farnborough. And new for UK viewers, you can now buy a battery EV and much more at everythingelectric.store. Now, back to the episode. Now, even if I tried, it would be very difficult not to mention stories from China when it comes to the big 4 technological topics. We are increasingly aware of Chinese cars in Europe, but maybe less aware about heavy-duty vehicles, trucks, buses, construction equipment and special purpose vehicles like rubbish collectors, diggers, earth movers. All of these are now increasingly in use as battery electric machines, and sales of these machines are increasing every year. Now, this is from a recent story in Clean Technica. According to the report, in 2024, Chinese truck manufacturers sold over 87,000 battery electric trucks, which represents about 10% of heavy-duty trucks in China. So I just want to underline this fact. It's not vans or little truckettes. It's massive, great big heavy trucks. Battery electric. Not only are those sales up, but battery swapping with heavy-duty vehicles is also increasing. In China, approximately 30,000 heavy commercial vehicles sold in 2024 had battery swapping capabilities, nearly double the previous year's figure. By 2024, last year, China had deployed 2.7 million rapid charge points, with 44% designed to enable the charging of heavy trucks. And the government in China has mandated that by 2030, they want 50% of their truck fleet to be electric. And let's be diplomatically frank here. If the Chinese government, that one, says the people and industries have to do something by a certain date, no one's going to say it can't be done, are they? They're just not going to do it. They're going to get on with it. And I haven't even mentioned electric buses. Just a reminder, there are over 2,000 electric red double-decker buses in London right now, a change that has had a huge impact, a beneficial impact for Londoners. In China, around 55,000 new electric buses hit the streets each year. The numbers are just staggering, with cities such as Shenzhen, Beijing and Shanghai approaching near total electrification of their entire bus fleet, and we're talking tens of thousands of buses. But what this tells us, without doubt, is that all ground transport can and indeed will be electric in the next couple of decades, which of course will have a huge impact on the fossil fuel industry and the more and more desperate people who support them and of course are funded by them. The people who take the dirty backhanded bribes. The famous people that we've all heard of. I wonder if any of them will react at all. Let's move on. Next story. Bill Gates, same age as me. Okay, he's got more hair and he's a bit richer. He's been a very big advocate of nuclear power, and hats off to the dude. He's also recently been okay, sucking up to the orange bloke, but he's one of many, so we won't go there. When he's not kowtowing to a narcissistic autocrat, he does acknowledge we have a couple of little problems caused by burning 1.4 billion barrels of oil every day. So he kind of understands the science thing. But we need to remember he's a stupidly rich bloke who has used some of his fortune to actually help other people. What a weirdo! He hasn't kept it all for himself and fought to hold on to all of it and never pay any tax. Anyway, he's recently come out as a keen supporter of the latest geothermal developments in the USA. In some ways, this is a pro-fracking story because the technology to deplete the last reserves of fossil fuel in an insane and doomed attempt to keep the oil companies super profitable, they have developed some very useful technology. Basically, if you want to extract heat from deep down in the Earth's crust, you want to be able to expose the holes you drill to the maximum area of hot rock. That way you can extract more heat without drilling literally thousands of meters down. You go a couple of thousand meters down and then you go sideways for miles. The company that Gates is helping fund are using the same technology as the mad frackers, and it's working. The plant being built right now will generate 100 megawatts, 24 hours a day, with no fuel being extracted or refined or transported or burned. I think that's rather lovely. Next story. This is a report from One Step Off the Grid. And just a reminder, all the links to all the stories are in the show notes beneath this beautiful video. And this is a bit of a positive story. Yes, all around the world we have wars and tariffs and nationalism and ignorance and deliberate lies. But in Australia, okay, they've got a bit of all that, but they've also just installed batteries in 16,000 homes in 28 days. And these aren't piddly little tiny batteries. These are between 17, 18 kilowatt hours, enough to run a house for a day, but more importantly, enough to really reduce the strain on the grid around the evening peak. The cheaper home battery scheme being run by the Australian government is not only very popular, it's also very easy to get. A household needs new or existing solar installed, that goes without saying. And the battery installers that come then after that claim the discount directly, which greatly reduces the upfront cost of the battery to the householder. This not only massively reduces power bills for normal human beings, it's making a huge dent in the need for fossil fuel generating systems, which of course is causing quite a stir in Australia. Every household with a battery and solar will use less electricity generated by burning coal or gas. I wonder if the coal and gas companies are aware of that. I think they are. And very importantly, all these battery packs have to be VPP ready. VPP stands for Virtual Power Plant, because once all these batteries are linked up together, very much like vehicle to grid, then they can also supply power to the grid when needed. To quote One Step Off the Grid, the Australian Energy Market Operators 2024 Integrated System Plans calls for orchestration. What the using virtual power plants, VPPs, and aggregators to coordinate battery dispatch. This is critical to unlocking the full potential of home battery storage. Now, household batteries in Australia can now store, if you add them all together, a total of 3 gigawatt hours, with another 4 gigawatt hours from big grid batteries distributed around the country, and bigger ones are being installed all the time. There's so many stories about massive batteries being installed in Australia. The energy picture in Australia is changing at dizzying speed. It's a really good test case. Next story. Continuing with government support for clean tech, Ford are the first car maker in the UK to have 2 models eligible for the full £3,750 electric car grant discount from the UK government. These are the Ford Puma Gen E and the Ford e-Tourneo Courier. Now, this is from a story in Transport and Energy, and I quote, "The UK government said the level of the grant would be decided by the sustainability in the production process of the vehicles, with those who are manufactured to the highest standards receiving the biggest discount." So Ford, who have massive solar arrays on their factories and car parks and in solar farms around their works and everything, they also have a zero landfill policy in their manufacturing process. They don't chuck any old bits of rubber and carpet away if a landfill. So they're obviously leading the pack in low carbon and sustainable manufacturing. Hats off to them. But there are now over 35 cars that are eligible for the £1,500 electric vehicle grant, and there's been a marked uptake in UK sales as a result. Next story. This is something I'm not sure the UK public are aware of, and certainly the orange bloke with his windmill phobia and his patriotic British sycophant clearly haven't got a clue about any of it. I mean, but who's surprised with that? But official figures show very clearly that wind, solar, hydro and biomass, okay, I'll get to that in a minute, generated 50.4% of UK power last year. This is not 50.4% on a windy day or a sunny afternoon. This is for the whole of 2024. There are now plenty of times where more than half of our electricity alone is from wind, just from wind. And as I type this, it's 57%. I just had a look. That's just from wind. That's no solar, there's no tidal and no biomass. So that's great. Although, obviously, as I mentioned, there is one item on that list that's a little bit awkward. The biomass bit. Yes, that's a polite way of saying burning millions of tons of imported wood. Now, apart from it being utterly scandalous that we import timber from Canada to burn in an old coal-powered power station, I've filmed there. It's in Yorkshire. It's called Drax B. It's huge. And they used to burn coal. When I visited, they were still burning coal. Now they burn wood. Oh, it's so much more sustainable and eco. The company receiving it receive £1.2 million a day in government subsidies. Just 1.2 million pounds. That does not strike me as a sensible use of our resources. But thankfully, the amount of wood being cut down in Canadian forests and shipped down all the way down the Pacific coast of Canada and the United States, through the Panama Canal, across the Atlantic, and finally into Drax in Yorkshire. This is being reduced even as I speak and will stop altogether by 2030. So if anyone ever moans on at you about subsidies for wind farms, they don't get any subsidies now anyway, so that's a complete fiction. Just remind them how much Drax get for burning Canadian trees. It's an absolute beep, 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 beep disgrace. Next story. To Scotland now, where a consortium of companies from Germany, France and Belgium, sadly not the UK, have submitted offshore consent applications to the UK government for a wind farm in the North Sea. Nothing unusual about that, it's happening all the time. But this one is a floating wind farm. It's going to be located in deeper water, using over 70 floating monster turbines to produce 1 gigawatt of energy in total. Now, you have to be on a boat to see these big fellas. They're so far offshore. But Buchan Offshore Wind, the developer of this major floating offshore wind farm, it's locating it 75 kilometres from the northeast coast of Fraserburgh on the Aberdeenshire coast. Well, they secured the seabed development rights from the Crown Estate, Scotland, as part of the ScotWind leasing process back in 2022. These things take a long time. Some subjects, I say subjects, you could say citizens or whatever, but the subjects of this glorious island may not know, but the good old King of England actually owns the seabed around the UK. Thankfully, he's quite keen on wind turbines. Lovely old fella. This is just one of many new offshore farms in development at the moment. The overall target for offshore wind in the UK is 60 gigawatts. That's essentially more than we ever use at any one moment. Seeing as we regularly get over 50% of our electricity from wind now, today, and we only have 13.8 gigawatts installed, in 15 years' time we will regularly see over 200% of our electricity needs supplied by wind alone. This has happened recently in South Australia, which means we need to be able to store or sell vast amounts of that electricity, either store it here or sell it into Europe. And we store it here in batteries in our homes, in our cars, in our cities, in our cookers, in our refrigerators, in our washing machines. There's going to be batteries in everything. We really are entering a very different world. Next story. Now, we featured the BYD luxury performance car brand Wang a few months ago, and specifically the Wang U9 high performance. I don't even need to, high performance isn't enough. Ultra high performance sports car. All the stats connected with this car are insane. And they are making and selling them. And if you're crazy and rich enough, you can buy one today. And they're setting new records all over the shop. This is not some sports car that's been promised and never arrived. This is a sports car that's on sale now. They're selling them. Now, I know that things like top speed is utterly irrelevant to any emotionally mature individual, as is the 0 to 60 or 0 to 100 kph, 60 miles an hour, 100 kph, whatever. I'm also well aware of the remarkable top speed of the Bugatti Chiron Supersport 300 Plus, which has achieved a verified top speed of 490.48 kilometers an hour or 304.77 miles an hour. Those numbers are important. Remember them. To do that, this vehicle needs an engine with 16 cylinders, 4 turbochargers, 10 radiators, 7 gears, and it requires it takes this is just such a bonkers statistic. It requires it burns a gallon of fuel in 1.2 minutes when it's driving at top speed. So a gallon of fuel, an imperial gallon, larger than the US gallon, is burnt away in 1.2 minutes. Oh yeah, I should mention that it also costs 1.7 million US dollars, or around £1,258,000. But for pity's sake, let's just consider the fractionally slower Wang U9, which has 1 gear, 4 motors, lots of incredible electronics and batteries, and recently went from 0 to 472.41 kilometers an hour, or 293.5 miles an hour, at the Papenburg test track in Germany. To be fair, this also costs a hell of a lot of money. 236,000 US dollars, or 174,662 pounds, which means you can buy around 8 Wang U9s for the cost of 1 Bugatti Chiron. But hey, who's counting? Of course, the Wang U9 will be chundering through gargantuan amounts of electricity at top speed. But unlike the extracted, transported and refined liquid fuel the Chiron burns by the gallon every minute, the electricity in the U9 batteries can be generated without burning fuel, and the batteries can be used again and again and again and again and again for 10, 15, 20, 25, maybe even 50 years. So the fastest cars now, the fastest car up Pikes Peak in America, electric. The fastest car around the Nürburgring in Germany, electric. The fastest car up the Goodwood Hill in England, electric. And now the close to fastest street legal sports car, electric. But for how long are they going to not be number one? Wang are currently developing an even more insane and faster version of the U9. Oh, I forgot to mention, this car can also dance and jump off the ground. Very sensible. Next story. Range. Okay, slightly less annoying and pointless than the 0 to 100 kph or top speeds and all that nonsense. It has often been used as a rather limp stick to beat electric cars with. They don't have the range. Flip, flip, flip. I don't have the range. I need more range. Yes, everyone in an electric car who drives one now is constantly screaming in terror about range anxiety. It's a non-stop, vomit-inducing screaming panic. As soon as I get an electric car, I don't care how far it goes. I'm just, I've got range anxiety! Well, Jack Scarlett recently reviewed the new BMW iX3 Neue Klasse on everything electric cars. BMW have just run an independently scrutinised test where this car travelled 805 kilometres or 500 miles on one charge. How have they managed that? Well, Jack explains it very well, and do watch the show, but they have developed a super compact, very energy dense 108 kilowatt hour usable battery pack. And due to reduced costs of batteries and their new pack design, it's a whole lot cheaper than previous BMW battery packs or indeed cars. Having an electric car with a 500-mile range could mean, with average daily use of around 35 miles, which is all the statistics indicate that's how far we actually drive every day, you would only need to charge this car every 2 weeks. That, I would like to politely suggest, might remove a little bit of the screaming, vomit-inducing range anxiety that 99.999% of electric car users experience all the time, even when they're not in the car. They're just nodding off to sleep. The car's outside, gently charging, there's nothing going on, and they're screaming, "I've got range anxiety!" Said so in the Daily Mail. Okay, last story, and this one is a doozy. Now, there's been some pushback about solar farms being installed on agricultural land in the UK. I've driven past them, signs, "No solar farm here," outside an incredibly massive, expensive house. I get it. It does seem a shame when there's a lovely open field and it gets covered in dark glass solar panels, even if it's got sheep grazing underneath it, which they often have. As a non-farmer, I'm thinking, surely we could use that land to grow crops for food. But here's a little bit of information I know few people are aware of. Many of the crops we do see growing around, in this country, are not food for us, or they're not even food for animals we eventually might eat, but it's crops for fuel. The charmingly named biofuel. Let's put this in a bit of context. Around 133,000 hectares of agricultural land in the UK that could be used to grow food is used to grow bioenergy crops. Compare that with the 21,200 hectares dedicated to solar farms, which is around about 0.1% of the total land area of the UK. But here's another important fact. Actually, it's more important. 1 acre of solar panels can generate roughly 40 times more energy than 1 acre of corn or crop to produce biofuel. Solar energy can be a more financially viable option for farmers, with leasing land for solar panels generating more income than growing crops to produce liquid fuel. Growing these crops also requires significant energy inputs, which no one ever thinks about. What about all the fertilizer it needs? What about all the fuel for the machinery that does the farming? What about all the processing after it's been harvested? And this yields less energy. When you grow biofuels, it yields less energy than it consumes to make it grow. It's an utterly stupid and futile attempt to make burning fuel seem less damaging. Green biofuel. My ass. And of course, just like with the Drax wood-burning power station, there are some discrete subsidies available for farmers for growing biofuel crops. Well, they need it because it doesn't make any money. So we pay tax and some of it goes to grow unsustainable, loss-making crops that are turned into fuel we burn once. Might it make more sense to use that land to generate electricity at a much cheaper, cleaner and more sustainable way? Yeah. And of course, both these land-devouring systems are in competition with something that produces zero food and energy and takes up quite a lot of space. 124,806 hectares of this green and pleasant land are covered in, you've got it, golf courses. I'm not saying that's bad, I'm just giving a bit of context. Oops, my blood pressure is rising. I better take my pills and have a lie down in the dark soon. That's all for this episode. Remember, if you are around the south of England on the 11th and 12th of October, do try and come along to the Everything Electric event at Farnborough, where we will not only have our massive show with thousands of test drives, and I mean thousands, amazing talks, fascinating displays and demonstrations and home energy advice centres and everything like that. That's all incredible, but there's a plus this year. We will also have the terrifying tests of our Zaptastic machines as we film the last section of our 2 amazing episodes of Zap Heap, which are coming later this year. It's going to be genuinely historic. So please subscribe to this channel, please tell your mates, and as always, if you have been, thank you for watching. Now visit electricvehicles.expert, where you can follow everything electric and keep current with Clean Technica, The Driven, Electrek, and many more.